This guy's the absolute best. He's been doing it forever. Jose Mallea, CEO of LIBRE. So, look, a topic on many people's minds is this change demographic and how Trump was able to not only win, but win with a margin, win the popular vote. A lot of focus has gone into what has happened with the Latino vote. Hispanics across this country, we've seen this building over time. And who better to talk about that than this next guest? It's brought to you by AFP. Jose Mallea, how are you, sir?
It's great to be here, guys. Doing well.
CEO of LIBRE, and you put a lot of work into this for an awful long time. You've been in the political business for, two plus decades.
Yeah, definitely, man. Seems like yesterday. We were young, man. I had a lot more hair, which is why I decided to, pull on the hat. On top of the fact that it's super cool.
Yeah.
You guys hooked me up with a really awesome hat. Now it'll look bold. I looked at myself on the screen. I was like, what happened? These lights are too bright.
Yeah, right. This is too high def for any of this.
Come on.
But listen, for those of us who know you've been involved in the game for a very long time, but you have put all of your talents and expertise as a CEO of LIBRE into turning out Hispanic voters across this country, and we had made incremental progress for a long time. This really paid off, this cycle.
Yeah, definitely. Look, I think back and, you could almost say 24, 25 years ago I started doing this stuff, but 12 years ago I joined LIBRE the first time around, right? When they first started in 2011, joined them in 2012. It was early back then.
Yeah.
We were just talking to people about why we needed to reach out to Latino.
I remember I was at the conference.
Oh, were you at the?
I was at the conference
back in the day. When they first rolled out. Yeah,
and everybody was like, "Yeah, that's a great idea,
no-brainer." So thankfully, we have this amazing community of partner supporters that were like, "We got to go all in." But then the hard part came, which is we got to get into these communities and build trust with people.
Yeah.
Like they need to know that we're not just some fly-by-night political shop. The committees are known for going in and then breaking it down. We were there to tell them, hey, we care about you. We're going to show you that there's a better way forward, and the dream that you came here, that your parents came here with, is still alive, right? But this is what you have to think about. These are the issues that you got to get involved with: educational choice, free market, free enterprise, all these other things that we promote. And it started to pay off. With time, people were like, yeah, these guys aren't just a bunch of political characters.
They don't go away.
They don't go away. We do things for the community, right? So the left, as we know, for a long time, has been in these communities, right? They've been in minority communities playing these, politics of ethnicity and trying to pit one group against the other. And then what they try to do is get folks to depend on government, right? They tell them, listen, the only way you're going to get ahead in this country is by taking these government programs, by depending on government. And sometimes people don't feel natural doing that. They might need it, they might not, but a lot of folks are like, man, I don't really want to do this, but they're telling me this is what I have to do.
Yeah.
We show up, right, after decades of that, and we're like, there's a better way. Rely on yourself.
Yep.
Go out there and make it the way that you wanted to make it when you got here, when your parents got here, whatever. And it started to pay off, and we started to see some of that, slowly but surely building. And
it strikes a chord with these multi-generational communities that have built themselves up in their own lot in life and understand that what they're selling has certainly not worked out.
Right. And then that's what they started to figure out. Like, we would go to places that would tell us, listen, 2 generations ago, this place was thriving. People were working. All these great things were happening. Some folks started to get involved in some of these political movements from the left. Our community is torn up. We have people who have addiction issues. We have huge unemployment, and everyone. And 70% of our town is now relying on government assistance, right? Whereas before we didn't have that, and so they've lived it. It's easy to go to that person and say, well, there's a better way. It sounds difficult, sounds impossible right now, but if you commit yourself to these policies and you vote for candidates and you get involved in these kinds of issues, you can make your children's lives better.
I think it's also a testament to the work you've done over time, because rarely, although, look, Trump has done big things with segments of the communities that seem like an overnight change, like Blue Dog Democrats in rural areas in 2016 or young men in 2024, where you see like seismic shifts. But what you've been doing in Latino communities has been paying off cycle by cycle by cycle. And like, I'm old enough to remember when the 2012 election went down. And Democrats drove this narrative that Republicans were forever going to be a monolithic, largely Southeast regional party that didn't have any capacity of appealing to growing segments of the electorate.
Demographics is destiny.
Yeah, demographics is destiny is what they said. And then you saw like the RNC at the time sort of adopting all of these bizarre, like, oh, we've got to go out and reach out. But like, this is the world that you've lived in. And as you were just explaining, what LIBRE has done and what it's done under your leadership is not leave these communities, but continue to explain why it is that the policies of the Republican Party have benefited and will benefit you much more in the future. And like, we now, just in this election cycle, hit an all-time high.
Yeah.
I mean, that's got to be incredibly rewarding.
Look, it feels amazing. And honestly, look, the credit goes to the grassroots team. You guys have all been there. You know what it's like.
Totally.
Those people that were just breaking their backs to knock on doors. We were out there for, Senate candidates.
And they don't do it for stock options and retirement plans.
Exactly, right?
Yeah, they're doing it for a better country.
And those guys, man, like, and I told them when we had our last call, I was like, listen, you might be in a state that you just came short, or you might be in a state where you did something incredible. Every single one of you has contributed equally to this movement. Because if it's not today, it's going to be the next one.
Yep.
And this work that you've done, knocking on those doors, getting that community engaged, showing them that there's a better way than what they've heard from even, the only mainstream media in the Hispanic community is very liberal leaning, right? The two major networks, there's no alternative. But even what they've heard in the news, you found a way to get to them and show them that there's a better way, there are better candidates, and we saw the end result. But our work's not done, right?
And it's up and down ballot.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's an awful lot of people that would try to you look at top lines and you're like, well, this is because of this. But when you do this for a living and you watch up and down ballot movement towards the Republican Party, something's happening there.
Right.
And it's happened over a couple of cycles. This one finally broke through. And I think it goes to the credit what it is that you're talking about. It's not about a single personality, a single movement, a single thing. Like, people are just looking differently at this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And you see some of the like the ones that blow me away are places like, the counties in Texas. They've gotten a lot of coverage, right? I believe Zapata County and some of these other ones that are historical. We're talking 100 years, never voted Republican in the presidential election, very blue. And as they became even predominantly Mexican American counties, they were still very blue, right? It was tradition. Like, I have friends, Daniel Garza, our president, being one of them, who lives in Mission, Texas. I remember going down there and people are like, man, yeah, we like your ideas, but our families have been Democrats for 2 or 3 generations.
Yeah.
It's in our blood. It's our heritage. It's hard to break that. And you, like you mentioned, you saw it last cycle with, Mayra Flores, right?
Yep.
And then Monica de la Cruz, and then Tony Gonzalez. And now, I think, if I'm not mistaken, like the majority of the Valley is represented by Republican members.
Yeah, there's that one district in Texas that's 97% Hispanic that voted Republican. And we got to play you this clip from The View on how the left has been handling that.
We've been saving this. It's one of our favorites.
So we've got to play this.
And finally, we talk a lot about these different demographics and these assumptions of where they're going to go. Latinos in Texas, a district that's 97% Latino, went 75 percentage points for Donald Trump. Why?
Misogyny.
It's on the border.
It's misogyny.
Crisis is on their doorstep.
So
and they were begging people to care about it for years. We need to take some lessons.
That's what that was.
The lessons are not
Let me tell you, man, if you guys ever want to meet the biggest bunch of mama's boys, go hang out with some Latino friends. Like, we are the last furthest from misogynists.
Right.
Like, our adoration for our mothers,
right,
which then extends to our sisters, our wives, it's a different culture. So when people say that, they're just driving them further away.
Yeah. It's incredible, but it seems to be monolithic on the left. I mean, the reaction is, what was the Scarborough thing that we played last week where it was like, well, it looks like we have a real misogyny problem with
I saw it. Yeah, it was crazy. And with Al Sharpton going back and forth and talking about calling Latino, man, like, it's crazy.
It's wild,
It's wild because that's the only card they've been able to play for such a long time on the white community.
And it didn't deal.
Right. And now they're like, well, it's got to be it. It can't be because we have bad ideas, because the economy's not working for people, because the solutions we've offered made it worse. Right? No, it's got to be because they're just, they hate.
It's funny if you take a step back and you're like, look, you can't vote for Republicans because they're racists and they're sexist. And, you know, you keep on driving that over and over and over and over and over again. And then it turns out like people vote for Republicans and you're like, well, it's tougher to call them racist.
No, they'll find a way.
Yeah.
So I guess sexist. I guess that's what you got to be.
By the way, most Hispanics are like, what does that mean? Misogyny? I'm ashamed to say it. I grew up here. I had to look up the definition. You know, I'm like, what does that mean? Like, what are you calling me?
Yeah.
It's ridiculous, man. And I just, you know, they can keep doing that all they want.
Yeah, it just doesn't work. I mean, one of the things that I think we appreciate about your organization and what you've done, and it's a credit to your background and the commitment that people have at LIBRE to getting this done, is not treating the Latino vote as if it's monolithic, as if everyone who speaks Spanish
thinks the
is
same
somehow
way.
the same.
Yeah.
You know, and like you've got, look, South Florida, which I know you got a ton of background in. That's probably the most conservative group of folks you're ever going to meet your entire life.
Oh yeah,
you know, and that's different than Puerto Ricans. It's different than Mexicans. It's different than Venezuelans, and it's like you just the idea that people are all different and that they think differently, even within pots the Democrats put them in of where you're from.
No, they're all the same, and it's called Latinx.
Which is the craziest thing. Like I when that first came out, again, same thing. I didn't even know that people were using this term. And I would go to events in Miami, like, anybody says that Latinx word, we're going to kick you out. It's like, we don't know what that is, who that is. That is garbage, you know. So when the Puerto Rico comment came, I went out to do some press, and I was on on Univision, right, the biggest Spanish channel, one of their biggest political shows. This liberal Democrat analyst is there. He's like, they just offended Hispanics. How could you sit there and how could you defend those views? Because, you know, Puerto Ricans, and they called them garbage and this and that. And I said, listen, man, you have very little faith on the intelligence of Puerto Ricans. You are offending them by saying that they're going to cast their vote in the consequential presidential election and Senate races and congressional races based on a comment that a comedian made at Madison Square Garden. Come on, you know how bad we insult each other. You know the atrocities that I've said to my Puerto Rican friends, because we make fun of each other. Like Cubans rib on Puerto Ricans. We make fun of Dominicans. You know, even yesterday I was talking to a guy and we had like 3 of us on a call. They were like, "Hey, listen to this. A Cuban, a Mexican, and a Puerto Rican are walking through a room, and because all 3 of us were on the line, right?" And he said some off-color joke. So it's what we do. So no one was going to go and like burn the house down because some comedian called them garbage. I mean, it's offensive to me. Like the guy was so adamant, and I was sitting there just staring at him like, you can't be serious.
Well, and look at the results. Look at Osceola County, this largest Puerto Rican county in Florida, I believe, and I think Trump increased his margin by like 14 points.
Yes, which is huge. Is huge.
Yeah.
And even Puerto Ricans are different within their community. Osceola County, for the most part, Puerto Ricans who came from the island, some that came from the Northeast. But then Allentown, Puerto Ricans that are traditionally from the Northeast, that second generation, third generation, after being in New York and these really liberal cities, moved to Allentown. Those are the ones that are even more impressive to me, because eventually that's going to spread. To New York. That's going to spread to New Jersey and all these other places.
And you guys saw this very early on because you're in the communities. You have an incredible team. Izzy Ortega is a buddy of mine.
So cool. Yeah,
great dude.
Yeah.
And you have just thousands of volunteers out there knocking doors, working in communities. So you were hearing this in conversations at doorsteps ahead of the election. I wonder if there's anything that sticks out in your mind from early conversations at these doors.
Yeah, so that's the key to the effort. You know, AFP, which is our sister organization, we rely on the old-fashioned knocking, pounding the pavement, getting to those doors, talking to people. When we do that, like people immediately, when you're selling something that doesn't work, you know immediately. Yeah. Someone slams that door in your face, they tell you to go away. But when we would knock on those doors and people would open them, they're like, what are you talking about? So we start to talk about, sometimes it was Bidenomics talking against it, sometimes it was something else. And they would say, oh yeah, we're with you. We're voting against Biden. We're going to vote for Trump. And we would have to stop them like, wait. What about Sam Brown? Who's that? Yeah. I'm like, oh, he's running for Senate. You know, what about Dave McCormick? Oh, yeah, tell us about him. Oh, by the way, we're doing an event with him, you know, next week. You should come by. And I will say this.
But wait, there's more.
Yeah. And then they were like, oh, who are these guys? And so we're like, you got to get involved. You got to vote in those races. Dave McCormick, Bernie Moreno, Mike Rogers, Hovde, and Sam Brown all of those guys
got it.
They were awesome. Those guys went to our events, and they were amazing in the community. Mike Rogers received a majority of the Hispanic vote in Michigan.
Yeah.
You know, real shame he didn't make it.
Yep.
But McCormick, Moreno, all these guys, I am excited that they've been elected. They're going to be great members, but the fact that they were so engaged with the community, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't like we're just going to run some ads. I'm going to try to speak Spanish on some wacky radio, which, by the way, never works.
Right.
And I tell Kaz all that, don't do that.
No, I
it's the weirdest thing.
Hola, ¿cómo
Hola,
te
mi
llamas?
nombre
Me
es,
llamo-
you know, no, don't do that. I'd rather you speak in English and get some other guy to translate. But anyway, we're done. But look, I'm excited about that because the more of those kind of candidates that we have that won, now they're going to go tell that story to the next generation of candidates. They're going to go on the stump, and they're not afraid. That's the thing. Do not be afraid to go into the community. No one's like, the minute you show up, people are going to embrace you. They're going to welcome you.
People
and then,
know
yeah,
now.
That's
because
it.
of all this work, they
Yeah.
know you're not there just for their votes. You're here there to listen.
You're there to listen. That's right.
You know,
That's right.
and I think that's the biggest change in the Republican Party is that this isn't just a cyclical thing where people are like, oh, can I get the 51 and I need, so many of these people, so I'll go.
Yeah, then you
check
fold
the
up
box.
shop and go away.
And that's the biggest distinction between the Republican and Democratic Party with this particular community is that you're not just there on election day. Like you actually care.
Yeah.
And it's worthy of investing and getting deep into it and ensuring that this is a part of your coalition going forward, which is, look, I am sad too that those guys, a number of them didn't get over the top. But what they built, what they helped build with you is whoever follows them in a
right.
Senate seat or a statewide seat or a presidential election knows that they're building on top of what it is that they committed to.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And that's why we made that comment, right? That's what we keep telling our team. Stay in the fight.
Yeah.
What you did, it's going to pay off. Like this is the second round, the third round. These are body blows. When you get to the last round, you'll see this all pay off.
So what does the future for LIBRE look like here, in the next year, the policy fights, and a 2026 midterm in which a lot of people came out in 2024 for the first time.
That's right.
And voted.
So a couple of things. So on the policy fight side, and we have an amazing group of partners. I know Brent Gardner was here recently, right?
Yeah.
He's a genius when it comes to like policy and understanding this stuff. We have a team member, Helder, who's part of his team that works with us. We're going to work with these members, these new members, to explain to them why it's so important now that we do the right work.
Yeah, let's deliver on the promises.
We got to deliver on these promises. Yep. Like people are not dumb. Like you can get their vote, but in a way, with some of these communities, we're renting their vote. Right? These are independent voters.
Trust but verify.
Right. Exactly. Who had never voted before for Republicans. Some had never voted at all, especially the young males, right, that came out. But now you got to show them that you were worthy of earning their vote. So let's go out there, deal with these really important issues around the fiscal cliff, right? Which I know he dove into some of that in that last episode. We polled recently and we asked general population, but we had a big segment of Hispanic voters what their idea was the best way to get out of the problem that we have, the deficit. And they said grow the economy. Taxes was like 15%, right? And Democrats, taxes was maybe like 35%, which I was surprised. 60% of Democrats, like 80% of all Latino voters, economic growth. They get it. Yeah. So that's what we need. We need to pass policies that are pro-economic growth, not increase taxes. Get rid of regulation. I think that'll be the very biggest challenge that Congress will have to face, which we know is not an easy thing with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act and a bunch of other stuff. But that's what's going to pay off in the long term for the midterm and then for the next general election cycle.
Well, Jose, we are very lucky to have you and your organization and the commitment of your organization to try to do this on an incremental basis where we have a bust-through night like we did a week ago. And ultimately, who knows what the road brings, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this could be a generational change.
Absolutely, and we're going to keep growing, right? We're in 13 states. There's no reason we can't be in 20.
Yeah,
right. Because these communities are popping up throughout the country, and we need to get to them now before the other guys do, poisoning the well.
Yep, absolutely. So, if people want to get involved, where do they go?
Yeah, they can go to BeLibre, BeLibre.org. The LIBRE Initiative in English, .org, and then social media, LIBRE Initiative on Instagram, on Twitter, Facebook. Like, that's the best way to engage with us.
Dude, you're the man. Thank you
guys
for doing
this.
Thank you
guys
Congratulations.
for doing this. Thank you guys. Yeah, and congrats to you 4 years.
Yeah.
Amazing, man.
How
I mean,
about
this you guys got to take some credit too. Like, we got to throw some flowers your way here because
Come
this
along
is
the way.
yeah, man, and this is awesome. We need more of this.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, guys.